Christmas Eve arrived like all the others for Joaquim. Silent, introspective, and for him, full of meaning that he still couldn't fully decipher. The small apartment he lived in, on the second floor of an old building, was decorated in a modest way, with a pine tree that he himself had decorated with gold and silver lights. There was something symbolic about that simple decoration. It reflected his essence, discreet, but illuminated by a light that seemed to be more intense than he himself recognized. In recent years, Joaquim had felt more isolated than ever. It wasn't just the physical loneliness of not having a close family or friends who were always around. It was a kind of loneliness that seemed to come from a deeper place, as if he lived at a different pace to the rest of the world. But that night, as he looked out of the window and watched the Christmas lights twinkling on the neighboring houses, a memory struck him. That of strangers who, throughout his life, always seemed to approach him, as if they were drawn to his presence. It was as if an invisible force connected him to these people. He clearly remembered a recent episode. At the market, while picking apples, an elderly woman he had never seen before approached him and started talking about the challenges of raising her grandchildren after the death of her daughter. It was a heavy conversation, but Joaquim couldn't ignore it. He listened carefully and offered words that calmed her down. She thanked him, saying, "I don't know why I told you this, but something told me that you would understand." Joaquim had always seen these interactions as mere coincidences, but that night something changed. He began to understand that this was no accident. He attracted people because his inner light was undeniable. That was the first sign he recognized. Strangers felt compelled to approach him, confiding in him their secrets and anxieties, as if he were a beacon in the middle of the darkness. Joaquim had always been guided by an almost supernatural intuition. When he was young, he was the kind of person who always knew what to say to avoid a problem, or who seemed to be in the right place at the right time. Now, in middle age, this gift seemed even more acute. That Christmas Eve, as he was walking down the street towards the central square, he felt a sudden urge to stop midway and enter a small church that he barely noticed on his daily walks. Without a second thought, he opened the chapel door, finding himself in a warm, candlelit space. The air smelled of incense, and there were only a few people sitting quietly in the pews. Joaquim chose a seat at the back, closing his eyes and allowing himself to feel the moment. It was there, in the sacred silence of that place, that he remembered another crucial moment in his life, when his intuition had saved him. Once, while planning a last-minute trip, he felt an inexplicable sensation that he should postpone his flight. Without any concrete reasons, he changed his ticket to the following day. He later found out that the plane he was originally going to take had experienced severe turbulence, leaving many passengers injured. He didn't understand why he knew these things, but now he was beginning to realize his intuition was a gift, something that guided him at important moments. The priest's sermon that night seemed to speak directly to him. Sometimes God doesn't shout. He whispers. He speaks to us through a sensation, an intuition. Learn to listen to these whispers, because they can save your life. Joaquim felt a chill, as if those words were meant for him. His ever-present intuition was the second sign that he was a chosen one, someone with a special purpose. The next morning, Christmas Day, Joaquim woke up feeling melancholy. Although he liked the tranquility, there was something about Christmas that brought out all the emotions he kept hidden. He was deeply sensitive, and this often made him feel overwhelmed. He remembered how, during his childhood, he could feel his mother's sadness, even when she tried to hide it. Sometimes, he would pick up on the tension in an environment even before something happened. Over breakfast, while listening to an old record of Christmas songs, he thought about how this sensitivity had already helped him save lives. Years ago at a work meeting, he sensed that a colleague, who was apparently fine, was struggling internally. Not knowing exactly how to approach him, he asked, "Are you okay? Do you want to talk?" This simple question led the colleague to burst into tears, confessing that he was thinking of giving up on everything. Joaquim stayed by his side, offering support and guidance until he got professional help. However, this sensitivity also came at a price. It made Joaquim avoid crowds, as the intense energy left him exhausted. Family gatherings at Christmas were particularly difficult. He could feel the silent conflicts, the unspoken tensions, and it drained him emotionally. But at the same time, he knew that this ability to feel was a gift. It was what connected him so deeply to others. It was the third sign that he was different. His sensitivity to emotions was a bridge to help those who were lost or needed support. After breakfast, Joaquim decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. He loved watching the dogs playing in the snow and the children running around in their winter clothes, laughing and throwing snowballs at each other. He noticed how animals and children often seemed to be drawn to him. As he walked through the park, a small dog, which had escaped from its owner's collar, ran towards him, jumping happily on his legs. Joaquim bent down to stroke it, feeling the animal's instant trust. The owner approached soon after, thanking him and commenting, "It's strange. He never goes with strangers like that." That always happened. Cats that were normally reserved came to lie on his lap. Children, even the shy ones, felt safe by his side, as if he were a protective figure. He remembered a child at the local church, months before, who held his hand and asked, "Are you an angel?" Joaquim laughed, but the question stuck in his mind. He began to realize that these moments were not casual. They indicated something deeper, an energy that radiated from him, something that the most innocent and sensitive beings could feel. This connection with animals and children was the fourth sign that he was special. On the evening of Christmas Day, Joaquim felt a restlessness he couldn't explain. It was as if something was calling him, but he couldn't identify what. He went to bed earlier than usual, but his sleep was abruptly interrupted at 3:16 a.m. He woke up with a start, feeling completely alert, as if he had been called to be present at that moment. He looked out of his bedroom window and saw the city sleeping under a blanket of snow, with the lights of the Christmas decorations flickering softly in the darkness. It wasn't the first time this had happened. Joaquim noticed that he often woke up between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., which he thought was strange. Sometimes he thought it might just be ordinary insomnia, but at other times he felt there was something more going on. It was as if the universe was trying to talk to him, taking advantage of that moment of absolute silence to transmit messages that he didn't pick up during the day. On that particular early morning, Joaquim decided not to fight sleep. Instead, he got up, made himself a cup of tea and sat down in the armchair by the window. He looked up at the starry sky and began to ponder what that feeling of calling might mean. In the stillness of the early morning, he felt a peace that he rarely experienced at other times. It was as if his mind, usually full of worries, suddenly became clear. He remembered a Bible passage he had heard at Christmas Eve Mass. In silence, God speaks, and in the stillness, He reveals His mysteries. Perhaps that time was more than just a moment of reflection. Perhaps it was an invitation to connect with something greater. These nocturnal awakenings, which had previously seemed uncomfortable, began to make sense. Joaquim realized that they were a fifth sign that he was a chosen one. In that moment of absolute calm, between the physical and spiritual worlds, he felt he could hear the divine voice more clearly. The next day, still reflecting on the events of the early morning, Joaquim decided to do something different. go out for lunch at the town's community cafeteria, where people gathered to share Christmas stories and meals. He knew he would be surrounded by animated conversations and curious looks, but he was determined to face the discomfort he had always felt in social settings. Sitting at the table, Joaquim noticed how his presence seemed to provoke different reactions in people. Some seemed drawn to him, while others looked away, as if trying to decipher him. He remembered how, throughout his life, he had always been the different one. Ever since he was a child, he had realized that his thoughts, interests, and even his way of seeing the world set him apart from others. While his schoolmates dreamed of traditional careers, Joaquim wondered about the greater purpose of life. While others sought social acceptance, he preferred to spend hours alone, reading or walking in nature. This feeling of not belonging had accompanied him all his life, but over time he had learned to find strength in his uniqueness. During lunch, a woman sitting next to him started talking. She mentioned how she felt like she didn't fit in anywhere, especially during the holidays. Joaquim smiled and replied, "Maybe not fitting in is a sign that you were made for something unique. Sometimes being different means you're seeing the world in a way that others can't yet see." The conversation made him reflect on his own journey. From an early age, Joaquim realized that he wasn't like the others. He didn't fit into the groups at school or share the same interests as his childhood friends. While the others were happy to follow trends or seek acceptance, Joaquim felt a deep desire to do things his own way. This became even more evident in adulthood, especially at the holidays. While many of his colleagues spent weeks planning elaborate parties or buying expensive presents, Joaquim preferred to use the Christmas period to reflect. He wondered how he could help someone in need or bring a little comfort to those who were lonely. This attitude was unusual, and sometimes he felt misunderstood. "Why don't you come and have fun with us?" his friends would ask. Joaquim, however, could never fully explain why he preferred to spend Christmas in a more introspective way. He knew in his heart that his way of experiencing Christmas was part of something bigger. At the community Christmas dinner, he often chose to sit with the less fortunate, listening to their stories and sharing words of hope. Once, while talking to a man who lived on the streets, the man said to him, "You're different. It's like you see something that others don't." These words resonated deeply with Joaquim. He understood that being different was not a weakness, but a strength, a way of living in line with a unique purpose. Embracing his difference was liberating. He realized that he didn't have to mold himself to the expectations of others or try to fit into a world that often seemed superficial. Instead, he began to value his uniqueness and understand that this was one of the hallmarks of being chosen. He was called to live an authentic life, guided by higher principles, and this required the courage to tread a path less traveled. Accepting his difference hadn't been easy, but he was beginning to understand that this was one of the most striking characteristics of the chosen. Being different, walking a path that few choose, was the sixth sign that he was destined for something greater. Later that evening, Joaquim returned home and sat in front of the fireplace, which crackled softly, warming the room. He thought about what the woman in the dining room had said about feeling alone, and realized that, for him, isolation was almost second nature. It wasn't just being physically alone. It was a deeper feeling, a disconnection from the superficial world that most people seem to inhabit. For years, Joaquim had fought against this isolation, trying to find ways to fit in or create deeper bonds. But as he got older, he began to see isolation in a new light. He realized that, in fact, these moments of solitude were opportunities for spiritual growth and introspection. It was during these periods that he found clarity, strength, and a deeper connection with the divine. He remembered a passage he had heard during a sermon. Before God sends us into the world, He calls us into the desert. These moments of isolation were not punishments, but preparations. They shaped him, strengthened him, and made him more aligned with his purpose. At that moment, Joachim realized that his isolation was not a burden, but a gift. He understood that, although he was lonely at times, this solitude was what allowed him to delve deeper into his soul and discover truths that he would never have found amid the noise of the world. This was the seventh sign that he was a chosen one, the ability to transform solitude into a powerful tool for self-knowledge and connection with the divine. Joaquim spent the last few days of the year with a new understanding of himself. He now recognized that each sign, each seemingly isolated experience, was like a beacon that lit up the road of his spiritual journey. In the days leading up to the new year, while the streets were filled with lights, laughter, and celebrations, Joaquim opted for something more intimate. He sat in front of the fireplace with an open Bible on his lap and reflected on how God had orchestrated every detail of his life up until that moment. He understood that being chosen was not a matter of privilege, but of purpose. It wasn't about being better or more special, but about being aligned with a divine plan that he had only just begun to unravel. He thought about how each of the 7 signs had shaped him. 1. The approach of strangers. Joaquim realized that these unexpected encounters, like the one with the old woman during Christmas week, were no accident. They were moments when his inner light guided those who needed support, making him a channel for consolation and hope. 2. His powerful intuition. It was a divine compass, protecting him from dangerous situations and directing his decisions. In every choice guided by this invisible force, he felt a spiritual hand shaping his path, especially in times of uncertainty. 3. His emotional sensitivity. Although it made him feel deeply, often to the point of exhaustion, this sensitivity was a gift that connected him to the pains and joys of others. During the end-of-year celebrations, this made him a confidant and a compassionate listener. 4. The connection with animals and children. This affinity was a reflection of the purity he carried. Joaquim always felt welcomed by the little ones and the animals, as if they recognized in him an authentic goodness that the adult world often ignored. 5. The night wakings. Waking up in the dead of night became a sacred moment for him. Joaquim used these quiet hours to pray and reflect, finding clarity and strength to continue his journey. 6. Comfort in being different. He accepted his uniqueness as a calling. Joachim knew that being different was a privilege and a mark of those who have something unique to offer the world, especially at times like Christmas, when many were lost in superficialities. 7. Isolation as preparation. Solitude was never a burden for him, but a divine gift. Joachim recognized that in these moments he grew spiritually and connected even more with his purpose, allowing him to be ready for the missions to come. In the end, each sign seemed like a piece of a bigger puzzle, shaping who he was and what he was destined to do. Joaquim decided that in the coming year, his mission would be to embrace his journey as a chosen one even more. He would make a point of continuing to listen to his intuition, welcoming those who sought him out, and using his light to illuminate the path of others. If you identify with the signs in Joachim's story, know that this is no accident. You too may be a chosen one, someone destined to live with purpose, guided by a deep spiritual connection. Recognizing these signs is the first step to understanding your unique journey. To help you deepen this journey, I want to introduce you to the devotional, The Chosen, a 40-day journey of preparation. This spiritual guide is an opportunity for reflection and transformation, designed to help you connect with your purpose and strengthen your faith. For 40 days, you will be guided by daily reflections, Bible verses, and practical challenges that will help you apply spiritual teachings to your daily life. Each day of this devotional is an opportunity to grow, listen to God's voice, and align your life with the plan He has for you. Don't rush it. Take advantage of every moment to dive deep into your faith and experience true transformation. If you felt that this story resonated with you, leave a comment below and share your experience. Let's create a community of light and purpose together, where we can support and learn from each other. I'm George, your spirit guide, and I'll be here to accompany you on your journey. Subscribe to the channel to receive more inspiring stories and content that will help you discover and live your purpose. May your light shine brightly, and may the next chapter of your life be filled with meaning, peace, and divine joy. See you next time.